Good Wednesday to everybody in Gov 603. Welcome to week boom 2. How you doing? I could be looks like I could be doing better. I don't know what's going on with my lighting here. Let's see. Yeah, it's not better. See if we can fix that. Still not better. Don't know what that is. Gonna have to get that fixed. Okay, welcome again. It's Wednesday. Now, normally these, I put this video up on Monday or Tuesday, but with the holiday, here we are. So, whoa, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's get started with some caffeination. Let's see, what do we have in the cup today? Rocky Mountain National Park. Okay, beautiful. I had the pleasure of hiking the Ptarmigan Pass there some years ago. I have this love-hate relationship with national parks. I have to confess, on the one hand, it's some of the, most beautiful and spectacular places, scenery set aside, as it should be. Okay. On the other, to be, it's funny because and we'll talk about this in the course of our work. When you mark something out, when you designate something and set it aside, it tends to draw a lot of attention. And that is very, very much the case. See, now my lighting is getting a little better. Maybe it's my camera. That's very much the case where national parks are concerned. So because they're set aside, there's a lot of people that want to go there, and to keep the place from being trampled to death, there are a lot of rules and regulations. I, tell you a little bit more about myself. I find, sort of my center, is that a term we still use, out in deep, far out, wild places. I am very, very happy, hundreds and hundreds of miles from any structure. I'm on the trail every month. So I backpack year round. Except for lately. Okay, I don't know what's going on where you live, but where I live here in the Midwest, this is like Arctic. It's Wednesday, and it's finally starting to get warm. But from like last Wednesday, it was, the temperature would get up to something like 6 degrees Fahrenheit. And at night it would be negative 15. And then if you stood out in the wind, it was something like negative 27. I mean, something is really wrong here. Cold. So not so much like that, but throughout the rest of the year, you'll find me on trail a lot. And then in the summertime, we always plan 1 or 2 really big trips. So we go out for, 30 miles would be a short trip, 50 miles, 100 miles, 5 days, 10, 11. We did a 12-day trip once, and spend time just. National parks are great. On the other hand, because they draw attention to themselves, they are so laden with regulations that, if I want to go somewhere where I have to reserve the place that I sleep, pay for the place in which I sleep, which I can only be in that place on a certain day between certain times, dude, I'm going to a hotel, because that's what that is. But that's how they run national parks. That's not why I go outside. Okay. I go outside for not only freedom of movement of my body, but of my mind. And let me suggest this to you as a general life approach. Freedom is not freedom without the possibility for things to go wrong. All right. A free choice is not a free choice without the possibility of us really screwing things up. Now, don't screw things up and arrange it so things don't go wrong, but to have something arranged in such a way that the latitude for things going wrong gets pushed down, 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 down. That's not what freedom is. Okay, it's kind of like our journey, towards what comes after this material world. Nobody is going to be dragged kicking and screaming into heaven. I believe we are essentially given enough rope to make it up over the wall or to hang ourselves. And that's a good thing, because that's what freedom is. All right. So, but if you get a chance, go to Rocky Mountain National Park or some of the others. Beautiful. All right, that's better. Now I'm your sufficiently caffeinated instructor. Let's talk about what we're going to do this week, which is what we do in these videos. And then the next video, we'll talk about what you did last week. Now, there have been a few of you who contacted me, and you've got, some things popping that are keeping you from the discussion sections. And what I'll do is I will grade last week's discussion section sometime this week, because I want you to get a sense of what we're looking for here by way of response. And I still don't understand what is going on with the lighting here. Maybe it is my camera. Maybe it's time for a new camera. See, that's better. Anyway, I want you to have an idea as to what we're looking for. Okay. But there have been some of you who contacted me with various things going on, telling me, I can't get to the discussion sections, the discussion questions. Yeah, okay. And I understand sometimes things go on, but especially in participating, that is developing a conversation with your classmates, we really can't give credit points if you skip that bit. And if that interaction, that discussion comes, anytime significantly later after that week is finished, well, then this isn't a dialogue. It's a monologue. That is, if you're just talking to someone's answer and they've already moved on to the next week or the week after that, and there's really not an opportunity to talk back to you, you're not having a conversation. Okay. And we we're not going to give out full points for that. Okay. So make sure that you do that. And again, as I've said before, please make sure that you answer the questions before, quite literally the 11th hour of the last day. So you give your classmates the opportunity to have material to respond to. Okay. So this week, all right, we're going to, again, keep developing the momentum in which we are isolating out specific topics by way of definition that pertain to empirical and quantitative research. So, for instance, you're going to be asked in one of the discussion questions, why does empirical research need a design? And in fact, empirical, by definition, empirical research is something that has a design. Okay. What's the relationship of the one to the other? You're going to be asked to consider, why is it that some researchers don't see their blind spots? And, yes, inherent in these questions is the assumption that you've read the material and you understand what it is what we mean when we say blind spot. All right. In this case, I'll just tell you, blind spots are the biases that, we all have. Okay. But here's what I want you to make sure that you do, to be careful, to try as hard as you can to do. All right. In your research, in your work, be an investigator, not an advocator. What do I mean by that? Do I mean by that you don't have things that you're passionate about and, you're just like, oh, well, whatever, could be this, could be this. No, that is not what I mean. I have things that I advocate for. I have things that I believe should be this instead of that. I have things that I believe that are this, and they need to be more of this, whatever that thing is. All right. I mean, Christians, throughout the world that are persecuted. That's one of the in my research, in my work, that's one of the things that I advocate for. Social change that brings large scale societal change, behavioral change that brings large scale social change downstream. That's another thing that I advocate for. And if you read my work, especially my non-academic work, that comes out. But here's the thing. In your research, okay, you must develop the habit, the pattern of being an investigator, an impartial investigator. It's, as researchers, it is simply our job to ask the questions and then answer them, whatever the answer may be. If it's yes, if it's yes. If it's no, if it's no. Being an impartial investigator will make you a better advocator. Okay? Because the reason for that is, you know, I don't know what it is that you might want to advocate for. Whatever, you know, causes you feel need attention. But whatever it is, I'm gonna bet you that there's going to be somebody on the other side of it that does not agree. All right? That just doesn't believe this is a cause worth our time, or you're getting it wrong, or whatever. Okay? If you develop the skill sets to approach any question concerning any issue as an investigator, and you come to impartial conclusions, those who oppose you will have less to attack you with than if you start from the position of advocator and you ignore evidence, or you overemphasize evidence, or you draw conclusions that are really not supported by the evidence or how you handled the data, you know, all of those things. Okay? If you stay away from that, it will make you a stronger advocator. Okay, so in the readings, you're gonna touch on that, and I want you to discuss that. Okay, and then also, this is really key. I want you to learn how to formulate a hypothesis. All right, we're going to be using this a lot throughout the semester. I will tell you here now, a hypothesis has 3 elements. Okay, so you can test the hypothesis to see if it's a good hypothesis if it has the following 3 elements. Number 1, there are at least 2 variables. Now, what do we mean when we say variable? A variable is any event, any thought, any feeling, anything. Okay. Oh, so for instance, let's see, the temperature of this coffee could be one variable, and the reaction of my lip when I put it on there, that's another variable. Okay. Trump giving a speech, President Trump giving a speech after winning the Iowa caucus is a variable. And news agencies that did or did not carry the speech, that is, would or would not broadcast it, that's another variable. Okay, a variable is just an event. All right, so an hypothesis has to contain at least 2 variables. All right, it must make a prediction about the causal relationship of the one variable to the other. Well, what do we mean when we say causal relationship? And this is important. You need to understand this for this class. Okay? Causal relationship means when this happens, it affects this. And the word effect, with an A, not an E, effect, is really important here. Not if this happens and then also this happens, or this is happening at the same time as this. Okay? That's not causation. So here's a phrase I want you to burn into your head. Correlation is not causation. Let me say it again. Correlation is not causation. What is correlation? Correlation is simply 2 things happening at the same time. Now, causation is always correlation because we have the 2 things, because the one thing's causing the other. But two things happening at the same time does not mean that the one thing causes the other. Let me give you an example. Everybody knows, it is commonly known, that bears can sense fear. I spend a lot of time in the woods, so I got to be attentive to this stuff. But I have found through multiple trials that when I go out into the woods, if I place this bear figurine in my backpack, it gives me a sense of security. It's something that's on my desk. It's familiar to me. Or I might even carry it in my hand so I can just sort of, and that calms me down. That eliminates the fear. And I never am bothered by bears. So every time I carry this, every time I've carried this in the woods, I've not seen a bear. Now, does my carrying this cause the bears to stay away from me? No. It's merely a correlation. It just happens to be that when I've carried this out in the woods, I haven't seen a bear. In fact, I rarely see bears. I've only seen them, actually bears in the flesh once in all the many hours and hundreds, thousands of miles I spent on trail. Okay. So carrying the figurine does not cause the bears to stay away. It's just a correlation. It's not causation. Here's another example. In the summertime throughout the Midwest, the sale of ice cream goes up. The incidence of drowning and near drowning in public pools also goes up. So what could we conclude? That if you eat ice cream, you're more likely to drown in a public pool? No. It's hot in the Midwest in the summer, so people buy more ice cream. It's hot in the Midwest in the summer, so people spend more time in public pools. The more time they spend in public pools, the more likely it is that you can't drown in a pool if you're not in the pool, okay? The more likely it is that they're going to drown. But eating the ice cream is not causing, I'm sorry for this lighting. Eating the ice cream is not causing the drowning. Increased ice cream sales and increased drownings, they're happening at the same time, but they're not causing one another. Okay, so back to the hypothesis. Two variables, you make a prediction about the causal relationship. This one thing is going to cause the other. And then the relationship has a direction. It goes in a particular direction. Let me give you an example. Here's a hypothesis. Like I said, I spent a lot of time out on trail. I spent a lot of time hiking. I live in the Midwest. And, the winters, just crazy weather notwithstanding, here are cold. They're not Arctic cold usually. This winter has been particularly cold. Global warming. If the globe is warming, I'm telling you what, where I live, it is not warming fast enough. I think I'm going to get a big SUV and just drive around the block with no destination in mind to do my part, just to help things warm up a little faster. But anyway, so when it's not minus 20, even in the winter, I go out hiking here in the Midwest. Now normally, because it doesn't get super, super cold, we do get snow, but it doesn't hang around. And what tends to happen is when it does snow and then it melts and things get very muddy. So the trails typically here in this part of the country in the wintertime are muddy. So when I go out, and I go out a couple times a month, even if it's just for a day hike, okay, and I come back in, my boots are usually muddy. What if I wanted to construct a study that asked the question, is there any relationship? I'm just wondering, is there any relationship between how well I wipe the mud off my boots or not, and what kind of mood my wife is in by, say, the end of the weekend. All right, so I could construct a hypothesis, and it might go something like this. The amount of boot wiping is positively correlated to my wife's positive mood. So I could construct a study that might go something like this. Just, at random, because I want to have equal number, throughout, say, 3 months, and if I went hiking, let's say twice a week, so, 8, 16, 24 times, okay? Some of the times I wiped the mud off my boots before I came into the living room rug, and some of the times I didn't. And I just tracked mud all over the place. Now, because I don't want to bias, I don't want to tell my research subject what's going on. I just happen to, say, Sunday night, just slide my wife a survey, say, "Oh, hey, hon, would you mind filling out this survey for me?" Oh, no reason. That would ask about her mood. And then I would count up the number of times that I didn't wipe my boots and on which days. And I would compare those days to the responses on what sort of mood my wife is in survey. And I could make a comparison between not wiping my boots and my wife being in a bad mood. So here's the hypothesis. The less I wipe my boots, the worse my wife's mood is in. So we have two variables: boot wiping, wife mood. We have a prediction about the relationship of the one to the other: not wiping the boots, increasing wife's bad mood. And it has a direction. That is, not wiping the boots leads to bad wife mood. Now, we could study the phenomenon in the other way, because let's say I was a jerk, which I'm not, but let's just say I was. And whenever my wife was in a bad mood, I'd say, "Oh, yeah, well, I'll show you." Wouldn't say that aloud because I've been married for 30 years, gang. I know what I'm doing here. But maybe in my head, I would show that. My wife's in a bad mood, and I would think, "Oh, yeah, I'll show you. I'm not going to wipe my boots the next time that I come in." Say it was a jerk, which I'm not. Okay. That would be a causation in the other direction. Wife bad mood to no boot wiping. But we're not interested in that in this case. We could, but we're not. We're interested in no boot wiping to wife bad mood. Do you understand? All right. So when you start writing your hypotheses, remember that they must have those three elements: at least two variables, a prediction about a causal relationship, and a direction to the relationship. Now, your job in putting together a hypothesis is not to prove the hypothesis is right. I'm not out to prove that when I don't wipe my boots, my wife's in a bad mood. I'm just there to answer the question. And if it turns out that yes, when I don't wipe my boots, my wife is in a bad mood, then I say yes at the end of my research. If it turns out that it's no, my wife really doesn't care whether I track mud on the floor or not. It's like, maybe she's just the most easygoing person that you're ever going to want to meet. Not. Then I would answer no. The hypothesis is not supported. Okay. So make sure that you remember that. Okay. And then, I'm going to ask you questions about literature review and so on and so forth. All right. So that's your readings. That's the point of discussion for this week. Finally, and normally, by the way, folks, these videos are not usually this long. They're like, 10, 15 minutes. This is when it's a little longer. You will do a research design project for this class. Okay. Not a research project. And here's the difference. A research design project is you proposing research. Think of it like this. Imagine that you are applying to somewhere to get $100,000 to do a research project. You want to pay yourself, you want to pay your research assistant, you want to pay for that new computer that you're going to need, you want to pay for all the cool software that you want to have to do the analysis. You want the money, which is fine. Get the money. Okay. What would your research be? You're going to describe to me what the project would be. You don't have to do the project, but you have to describe what it would be. So that's a research design project. And we're going to do this paper perhaps a little bit differently than you're used to doing papers in other classes. And those of you who've had me before will know this drill. But for those of you who hadn't, it goes like this. You're going to do this paper in 2 parts. You're only going to do 1 paper, right? But it has 2 parts, okay? The first part is due pretty soon, February the 12th. The second part, which contains the first part, and then the rest of the paper, is due at the end of the class, April 22nd, all right? So in the modules for this week, week 2, you're going to find the research design project guideline sheet, all right, in which I will explain part 1 to you, which is due February 12th. In part 1, what you need to do is think about your design project, all right? And if you're unsure, as to what you should study, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm pretty flexible about what you pick. I will put an additional discussion post up for this week, week 2, in which you put in your topic suggestions. Okay, so you're going to select a topic. And then for part 1, you are going to write your introduction. And you're going to explain to me what this is and why this is and why we should care. And by the way, here's the beauty of research. I get it. You're busy. You're students. You got all these other things going on. But you should relish this time in your lives as students here at Regent. Why? Because it is a rarity in the workaday world. Maybe I take this off. No, that's not any better. I'm still gigged by this lighting. It is a rarity in the workaday world that we get to decide whatever it is we want to work on. Most jobs, you're told what you're going to work on. Not as a researcher. You get to pick whatever floats your boat, okay? That's the gift. Aha! But with the gift comes the obligation. And the obligation is, number 1, it really has to be something that's worth, time and energy. And following out of number 1, it has to be something that's worth our time and energy to read about it. And so you, in your introduction, need to make a convincing argument as to why anybody else should give a darn. So why is this important? What problem are you looking at? What questions do you think need answering? Okay. So in your introduction, you need to clearly state the purpose and the focus of your research. Okay. It should be detailed and specific. And by the way, part 1, no draft work. If you send me draft work, I won't grade it. All right. This is these sections are complete, as if you were done with the paper. Okay. Then the next part to part 1, there's 3 sections in it. A literature review. This is a literature review think of a literature review in which you go through the literature and you only need like 5 or 10 sources in which you lay the background for what it is you're going to be talking about. All right. And then you discuss the specifics of what it is you're going to be researching. If you don't know what a literature review is, and I'm hoping that you've had this as an undergraduate, all right? And I know, so this is not your first semester because we're in the spring, or maybe it is for some of you, right? But I put a link in there to the University of Purdue, and they have an online source called Purdue OWL. Take a look at that link. And then finally, for part 1, I need your methodology section in which you describe to me methodologically how you're going to attack this research project if you did it. Okay. Now, this is due February the 12th. So that's, just a little under a month. Okay. The reason that I do it like this is twofold. Number 1, I want to give you an opportunity to get some really meaningful feedback from me about your research methodology, about your writing. Okay. And I will take a very, very close and detailed look at both. It is absolutely essential. It doesn't matter what you're studying, that we learn how to write clearly and convincingly. You can have the best idea in the world, and if you can't communicate it to everybody else, it's like a gem locked inside of a box. It is imperative that you develop as a writer, regardless of your field. Okay, so I'm going to take a really close look at that, and I'm going to give you some very specific feedback. And then number two, everybody says, well, research and writing is rewriting, and so writing is learned by doing it again. I'm like, okay, fine. Let's take that at its word. I'm going to give you the opportunity to go back and fix what it is that I say, hey, don't do this, or do more of what it is that I say, hey, that's great, do that, when you do part two. And here's the deal I have for you. If you turn in a complete part one, not draft work, this is, if you turn in draft work, this deal is off. If you turn in the complete work for part one, and I say, hey, don't do this, hey, do more of that, and you fix those things when you do part two, that is, you go back and fix it in part one and don't do them again in part two, I will change your grade if the grade goes up. So let's say you get like an 82, or maybe you get a 72, but you fix those things in part two in the completed paper and in part two you get a 92. I'll go back and change the score in part one from whatever it is to 92. And I only change it if the score goes up, not if the score goes down. Okay? So that's why I do it early, to give you some meaningful feedback. I'm here to help you develop as a professional. All right? But the deal only stands with completed work for part one. If you turn in like a couple of roughed out paragraphs for each of the section, no deal. Yeah, I will not allow you to go back and redo that. Okay, because you're not doing anything. I mean, I get it. I rough out my ideas when I write. Okay, that's fine, but that's not the completed thing. I write a lot for magazines and various newspapers. If I turn them in a draft, in fact, that could be before they agree to a story that I send them, I have to send them what's called a pitch. And a pitch is a draft. And if I turned in the draft as the story, they go, well, what's this? Where's the piece? Where is it you're going to write? Don't do that here. All right. I'm here to help you. Help me help you. Okay. All right, everybody. That was way long. Many apologies. All right. Have a fantastic week. I'll get you a video in which I discuss the material from last week later on in this week, and I will see you on Canvas. Okay? God bless.